Open your fridge right now. Go ahead. Look inside. You will see food that traveled thousands of miles to reach you. Food grown in a field, in a season, by a system that did not exist for most of human history. You probably think your ancestors ate simply berries, roots, the occasional slab of meat around a fire. But the real answer is far stranger. For almost the entire history of your species, there was no such thing as regular meals. There was no breakfast. There was no dinner time. There was only opportunity and hunger and whatever the land was willing to give you that day. Your body was built inside that chaos, and it never forgot. 200,000 years ago, your ancestors were not farmers. They were not even settled in one place. They moved, constantly, following herds, rivers, ripening fruit, the seasons themselves. Anthropologists call this way of life foraging, which is really just a polite word for eating whatever you could find before something else ate it first. So what did they actually eat? The answer depends entirely on where you were born. In the savannas of East Africa, early humans ate tubers dug out of the ground with sharpened sticks. In coastal regions, they cracked open shellfish by the thousands, leaving behind massive mounds of discarded shells that archaeologists still find today. In colder climates, they ate almost nothing but animal fat and meat for months at a time because plants simply did not grow. There was no single human diet. There were hundreds of them, shaped entirely by geography. But here is where it gets strange. Researcher Catherine Milton, a biological anthropologist who spent decades studying primate and early human diets, found something that overturned a popular myth. The idea that ancient humans ate mostly meat, dramatic and cinematic as it sounds, does not hold up everywhere. In many regions, plant foods made up the majority of caloric intake. Meat was valuable, meat was celebrated, but meat was also unreliable. Think about that for a second. A hunt could fail. A hunt could take days. A hunt could get you killed. Plants, on the other hand, mostly stayed where you left them. This is why so much of the ancient diet was not glamorous. It was grinding, literally. Archaeological sites across Europe and the Middle East have revealed grinding stones used to process wild grains, seeds, and starchy roots tens of thousands of years before farming ever began. Your ancestors were already turning wild plants into something closer to flour, long before anyone planted a single seed on purpose. Which raises a question that should unsettle you a little. If humans were already processing grains before agriculture, why do we treat farming as the great turning point? Why does every textbook draw a hard line at 10,000 years ago and say, this is where everything changed? Because it did change something, just maybe not what you think. Anthropologist Marshall Salins famously argued that foraging societies were, in his words, the original affluent society. Not because they had abundance in the way we imagine abundance today, but because their wants were few and the effort to meet them was often surprisingly small. Some foraging groups studied in the 20th century spent only a few hours a day acquiring food. The rest of the time was rest, socializing, storytelling. Compare that to what came after. When agriculture arrived, it did not simply add more food to the table, it added more work. Farming meant clearing land, tending crops, defending stored grain, and depending entirely on a single harvest instead of a wide, flexible range of options. Skeletal remains from early farming communities show something researchers did not expect. Heights dropped, bone density dropped, signs of malnutrition increased. In other words, the invention that is supposed to represent human progress may have made people, on average, less healthy, at least at first. So why did it happen at all? Because farming, whatever its costs to the individual, could feed more people per acre of land. And more people, even sicker people, eventually outcompeted fewer, healthier ones. Evolution does not care about your well-being, it cares about numbers. This is the twist that most people never hear. The agricultural revolution was not a nutritional upgrade. It was a demographic one. Now think about your own plate. Your body still carries the machinery built for that older world. A world of unpredictable feast, followed by unpredictable famine. A world where fat storage was survival, not vanity. A world where sugar was rare enough that your brain rewired itself to crave it intensely because a piece of ripe fruit in the wild meant quick, safe energy, and there was no reason to hold back. That craving did not disappear when farming appeared. It did not disappear when supermarkets appeared either. You are, biologically speaking, still a forager, standing in a world engineered by agriculture, and more recently, by industry, but running on hardware designed for scarcity. This is why food companies do not need to trick you very hard. They just need to offer you something dense in sugar, salt, or fat, and your ancient brain lights up exactly the way it was designed to. Not because you are weak, because you are, quite literally, doing what kept your ancestors alive. There is one more piece of this story worth knowing. Researcher Amanda Henry examined dental plaque from Neanderthal remains and found starch granules from cooked plants embedded in the calculus on their teeth. Cooked, not raw. This meant that even a different species of ancient human, one often stereotyped as a brutish meat eater, was preparing plant foods with fire tens of thousands of years before modern humans supposedly invented that idea. The picture that emerges is not of a simple, primitive diet. It is of an extraordinarily adaptive one. Ancient humans ate insects when insects were available. They ate marrow cracked from bones with stone tools. They ate seaweed along certain coastlines. They fermented foods long before anyone understood why fermentation worked. They were not eating a diet. They were solving a puzzle every single day with whatever pieces the environment gave them. And maybe that is the real lesson hiding inside all of this. Every fad, every trend, every diet that promises to return you to some pure, ancestral way of eating is missing the point. There was no single ancestral way of eating. There was only flexibility. Constant, relentless flexibility, built by survival, refined over hundreds of thousands of years. So the next time you stand in front of your fridge, feeling overwhelmed by choice, remember that this feeling itself is new. Choice was not the ancient problem. Scarcity was. Your ancestors did not agonize over what to eat. They ate what they could get, when they could get it, and their bodies adapted to whatever came next. You inherited that adaptability. You just rarely get to use it the way it was designed to be used. Open your fridge again. This time, notice something different. Not the food, the absence of struggle. The fact that you do not have to walk for miles, dig with a stick, or wait for the tide to reveal shellfish beneath the rocks. Your ancient body does not know the difference between real scarcity and modern abundance. It only knows the signals it evolved to respond to. And somewhere underneath every craving, every full pantry, every easy meal, there is still a forager standing inside you, quietly grateful that the search for once is already over.